So in the first Sunday of Lent, we are launching a brand new sermon series entitled Messiah's Message in Matthew. Well, there's 3 M's in that, and this is the 3M series I'm calling it. And understand that this message in Matthew, in this book, the Gospel of Matthew, is one of the synoptic Gospels, that being Matthew, Mark, Luke. Those are the synoptic Gospels, meaning they're very similar in structure and the stories that are shared. Yet also within each one of them, the synoptic Gospels, you get very unique perspectives as well. And Matthew, having been a tax collector, worked closely alongside of the Romans, specifically the Roman soldiers. So a lot within Matthew's gospel, you get this very powerful element of the Romans' perspective as well. It's a real blessing when you read this particular gospel. But also there's another theme that kind of runs throughout it as well that I really enjoy. This major message, you would say, of it is to repent. And what a great reminder that is in this season of Lent. And Jesus himself said, "For the kingdom of heaven has come near." That's Matthew chapter 4, verse 17. What an important season this is to truly look at our lives and to know the closeness, how close we are to the kingdom of heaven, and how important for all of us to, through this season, be in preparation for Easter. To understand then, too, that I hope this story sticks, this 3M series, by the way, I've kind of a couple things. I like to play on words. Some of you, I'm sure, know that, how I craft sermons, so hopefully that they stick a little bit harder with you. And just here's 2 of them. 3M series, mostly the Messiah's mouth. In fact, we're looking at most of the Sermon on the Mount through this Lenten series. So if you have a red letter edition of the Bible, these words are all red, meaning these comes directly from the Messiah, right from his mouth. So that's the first 3M. Another one is Messiah's message on a mountain, because a lot of what we're going to be looking at is the Sermon on the Mount. And I say this is a very important thing, too, why I kind of thought about this. This story came to mind. In my previous career as an auditor, one of the things that we had the privilege of doing, or one of the fun things or boring things, was to do inventories. And so I got to go to a lot of unique places and count different things. That might be the boring part for some of you, but I got to see a lot of different things. And the one inventory that I had done was in a 3M warehouse. I had no idea all the stuff that 3M actually makes. All kinds of things, tapes and bubble wrap and envelopes, all these different things. But I got to share something with you about the inventory when we were there. And this kind of applies to this Lenten season. While we were there, we were on different forklifts and stuff, going up and down within the warehouse to take a look at different things. And one of the requirements when you went up on the forklift was they had these belts on you that you had to hook on, so that in the event that you would fall, you would not go all the way to the ground. Well, there was a couple teams that were driving around on these forklifts, even myself. And I would say that was one of the unique things, not just counting, but doing it at different high levels and stuff too. But there was a gentleman that was on one of the lifts, and he didn't latch himself in. And up from the highest level, and that he fell off and went to the ground. Unfortunately, the way that he fell, I would say he fell on bubble wrap, but he didn't. That'd be too funny, wouldn't it? But he was all right. He didn't hurt himself too bad. But it did kind of make me think, this story came back to me when this 3M idea came back to me, how important it is in our lives that we don't get too high on ourselves or think that we're so up there that we couldn't possibly fall. And how important it is, look at this, to anchor our lives to the words of the Messiah and his message that he gives. So if you want something to latch yourself onto so you don't fall off with this brokenness in this world and all the difficulties, latch yourself into these messages, this 3M series, when we look at the Messiah's words that he shares in the Gospel of Matthew. Are we okay with the understanding now why I picked 3M for this sermon series? And let's look at the Sermon on the Mount. And part 1, we're going to jump right to Matthew chapter 5 today, which is where the Sermon on the Mount begins. And the first part of the message, how he starts his sermon, is really the Beatitudes. And we'll unpack that together in just a moment. Oh, wait, one more 3M then for you. I know you'll get sick of this by the end of this series, right? I'll try not to overdo it. But you know what? I'm okay for correction. So if someone says, this is too much, Pastor Mark, just let me know. I'm fine with this. Look, this one about the Beatitudes, if you didn't know about it, is kind of moving the message like monkey bars. You see kind of those rings. You'll see these 8 Beatitudes today as they kind of go. It's almost like, do you ever go on monkey bars? You got to progress. You got to swing kind of to each one. So we're going to unpack these 8 Beatitudes today, then too, kind of like as if you were on the monkey bars, kind of going one to the next, right through it then. All right, so the Beatitudes themselves are these 8 blessings delivered by Jesus to begin his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. And understand, too, the word itself is Latin for blessed or happy. We've been singing some of that word then, too, about blessed be your name, which means in that the term being happy itself. But to outline, this is important, too, the character of citizens. We talked about this major message is repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near or at hand. And really, this is a message for how we, as citizens of heaven, are to live our lives. So yes, truly in the Sermon on the Mount, you get a lot of these character development about something you can latch the way you live your life to so you don't fall off in the brokenness of this world. So Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 to 16 today we're looking at. If you'd like to follow along in your NIV Bible in front of you at the pews, you can open it to page number 958. I'm going to take a little drink of water here then too. And indeed, this is the introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. It says, now, when Jesus saw the crowds, this is a large number of people, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them the Beatitudes. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Next one, kind of moving along in the monkey bars here, if you think about this. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is, look at this, the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you. Why? Because of me, meaning Jesus. This is the words, the message of the Messiah, right from his mouth. Then he says, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward where? In heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And we'll pause right there. Look at these Beatitudes when you kind of look at this, kind of going from this message is kind of like if you're swinging on the monkey bars. One of the things I like about that concept is the starting of it. And we'll look at these just briefly today. You could do a whole sermon series. There's books literally written on these 8 Beatitudes or blessings that God has given. So we're like doing like the top level. You know, like it's like just taking one little lick of the icing on the top of a cake. I mean, that's how quick we're looking at it, but how deep these actually go. So this is not an in-depth study of it, but just to kind of give you some of those. What a powerful way to start off his sermon that he's speaking to those up on the mountain. And I think one of the greatest things about it, if you're there listening, is, and maybe you heard this too, doesn't it seem to flip the worldly values on their head? Like when you start thinking about what so many people in this life pursue, you've come across these Beatitudes. Oh, wait a minute! You get down to the bottom, the meek, or one of those, the meek shall inherit the earth. The peacemakers are called children of God. But bless those who are persecuted. I mean, this seems like it's all flipped upside down as to the way we should live our lives, because it seems to emphasize what the world does not. humility among our lives, mercy to other people, and peacemaking. Wouldn't you say that's in many ways a direct opposition to how the world calls us to conduct and live our lives? It's a direct assault on that very thing. You know, the people who seem to scream the loudest get the biggest, audiences, and think they're great, and they may look good, and they may say all the right things, and they push themselves off that way, and they have a big influence, and social media influencers, and all that stuff is such a big thing, where God says, starts this whole message off, so wait a minute, blessed are those who are humble, blessed are those who are merciful, and blessed are those who are peacemakers. And then I would even say, talk about that, blessed are those who are persecuted. Almost never do we think of that some sort of blessing, do we? But that's what he says. So there's these 8 blessings then. Let's look at them real quickly. And again, like I said, we're really just top of all these that can go into. That first one is poor in spirit. Recognizing spiritual poverty and dependence on God, and that's what. And I say, with going back to that little metaphor about the monkey bars, it's like you kind of start somewhere in your faith, and that's where a lot of people kind of begin, where it's like they know that they have this void or vacuum in their lives. They're saying, those who are poor in spirit, God is now paving this way of saying, through me, through Jesus, you can have this dependence on God. And so this invitation goes out to those first who are poor in spirit. And I think if he's speaking to these, if it's just to his disciples, to the entire crowd, you see this message of going out to those who are troubled. And you know what? Have you ever noticed this then too? If everything is going well in your life, your ears don't perk up as quickly when someone talks about someone who's poor in spirit or someone who's struggling, do you? But if you're struggling and someone addresses that, your ears open up very quickly because you know it's something you need to hear. Jesus starts it all off with that one. Then he says, those who mourn, you shall get comfort from God. Going on then, the meek, theirs is wait a minute, for inherit the earth? Isn't that something? Because isn't that something? It's almost like someone would raise their hand and say, Jesus, I think you're off on that one. Because doesn't it seem that who has the most powerful or most dominant, those who are the ones who will get all those things? But Jesus says, no, blessed are the meek, flipping this on its head, for those the ones who will inherit the earth. The fourth one, again, going very quickly, for those who are hungry and thirst. Now, like I said, we've started this practice of fasting, and honestly, in my life, I have not done a lot of that. You can tell about my physical appearance, but doing that practice of hungering this past week and fasting, like I get really hungry, and even myself being careful, going from the night before around 7:30 to like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that hunger really hits, and God's saying, boy, rather than that physical hunger, which we feed so easily, wouldn't it be nice that we could, in our lives, hunger and thirst for what? Be filled with the righteousness, for the righteous things of God. Wow. Do you have that hunger? Have you ever felt hungry for the things of God? How important that is to be called out in your life, to seek those type of things. We seem to get hungry for everything else other than God and his righteousness. Number 5 then, too, the merciful. They are the ones who are going to receive mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Isn't it something how ungracious we have become as people and how vindictive and vengeful we have become? But Jesus turns this on his head, too, and says those who are merciful, they're the ones that will be shown mercy. Where? In God's kingdom or in his heaven. Number 6, pure in heart. Why is this important? Why would this make sense? Those who are pure in heart, why? Because they're the ones who will see God. That's one of the things I hope that you're hungry for too, to see God. And then he goes on to say, blessed are those who are peacemakers, because it's the peacemakers who will be called the children of God. I'm looking again at the last one here. Again, I'm just going quickly through this. Those who are persecuted. That's a challenging one. Do you see how you kind of get all the one from the very first one there about those who are poor in spirit, may not even know God, all the way to those peacemakers, and then it's the peacemakers who are then persecuted. that the church is going to be attacked. And that's something I think we need to wake up to. I spoke some time talking about that in our Ash Wednesday service. To understand the reality, we should not be shocked when the church is being attacked, because Jesus himself takes his whole time in this powerful message to say, blessed are those who are persecuted because of those who are righteous. For why? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Wow. And he goes on to say then too about those that persecute, falsely say all kinds of evil against you. Why? Because of Jesus. Let's not be shocked by that. I felt a greater sense of calling in what I speak about to be prepared, church, for this type of attack on the church and persecution for those who truly are peacemakers. Isn't that something? That's astounding. You think that the last thing you would attack to be those who are peacemakers, yet that is what the world is coming for. So consider this. These are not simply rules, and that's one of the things about anything when you hear of the message, especially the Sermon on the Mount. It can be so overwhelming. I remember very clearly when I was very poor in spirit and came to a saving knowledge of Jesus in my college days, I read the Sermon on the Mount. I went through the Gospel of Matthew, and there were nights when I'd sit on my floor in my dorm room and be floored by these words of Jesus and think, I could never live like this. And I would think, boy, these aren't just simply rules, though, but an invitation to what? To be transformed of your life of faith, offering hope and divine reward to those, look at this, who align themselves with God's heart. This is what holds you up even when you're being attacked. This is the thing to latch onto when you hear these things. Not some like rules you need to follow, but to attach your life to hold on, even in the midst of persecution. I would say it's very foundational, too. The Beatitudes serve as the foundation of our Christian ethics. And it offers us a roadmap for living in a way, look at this, that is pleasing to God. We do so many things to please ourselves. This particular message from Matthew and this on the Sermon on the Mount is a lot of how to live your life to please God. And even right there, some of us can be challenged for that very thing. Wait a minute, God, I'll be a peacemaker, but I'm not signing up for persecution. I'll run the other way. But this is a call, a roadmap to live your life to please God. Look at this, even in the midst of persecution. It's almost like navigational. I was reading about this Sermon on the Mount. I was really taking thinking about this, that sometimes pilots, when they fly planes, and this is looking at like the navigational systems in a plane, and I would think one of the greatest challenges, if you've ever flown and you go up into the clouds, you can't see anything, right? To me, it would be one of those things that would really turn you around and lose your ability to see which is the way to go. And I think about this when we get up into the clouds of life, this message that he starts off with navigates a different way. It tells us to go down in humility to go up to the kingdom of heaven. So many people think that our whole path is, well, to go up, you got to go up. But in this case, he's calling those to kind of go down with humbleness with the way we live our lives to find and go up to the kingdom of heaven. Let's take a little last part of this then. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We get into this last part of what we're looking at today, very, very powerful section, the salt and light. He says there, starting at verse 13, he says, you are what? The salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Then he says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. Is that not the purpose of lighting candles? To give light. Like I said, don't hide it under a bowl. And verse 16, last verse. In the same way. Let me say that again. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Why? That they may see what you do, your good deeds, and then give you thanks and all the glory? No. And glorify your Father in where? In heaven. The whole thing, we said the major message in Matthew. This is for the kingdom of heaven. It's drawn near. It's the life of the Messiah. As we'll look at this sermon in greater detail, how important for us to do things in our lives, yes, good deeds, but not for our own glory, but to glorify our Father who is in heaven. Living a downward path for a path to heaven. It seems backwards. It seems upside down. One more 3M. This is Messiah's message for me today. For all of you, hopefully you say this. You are the light of the world and the salt of the earth. These are the things that Jesus relates to us. He addresses them directly with his mouth. He says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Wait a minute, Jesus, aren't you the light of the world? He's calling us to be that representation for God. And what a beautiful thing it truly is. And I found this quote in a commentary, Dave Gruzak. I just love what he writes. It's an online commentary, and he says, look, a key thought of both pictures here, because he says two things, salt of the earth, light of the world. Key thought of both pictures of salt and light is distinction, meaning different, to be different, distinct. Now you look at something and everything looks the same, but to be distinct, right? Different from everything else. Salt is needed because the world is rotting and decaying. Have you seen that? Have you seen what's going on all around us right now? It seems to be rotting and decaying. And if our Christianity, and this is important for all of us, is also rotting and decaying, it won't be any good. It won't be. It's like falling off, not being strapped in. And then he goes on to say light is needed, that because the world is in what? Darkness. That's what the world is. And if our Christianity, it imitates the darkness, we have nothing to show the world. To be effective, we must seek. And then he adds something else, and display. I like that. Right? Some people will seek the knowledge. They'll know what Jesus said, but then they won't do what? Display what he said. Seek it, yes, not display. He makes it very clear here to do what? To be effective, we must seek and display the Christian distinctive in our lives. We can never affect the world for the kingdom of heaven by becoming like what? The world. You gotta act like heaven. And the way Jesus shares all these things, even in these beatitudes, these blessings, it's upside down from the world. It sure is distinct, isn't it? Isn't it? It truly is. I'm going to close today with C.S. Lewis, just a brilliant Christian theologian. I always love reading his stuff. I do a lot of reading of commentaries and stuff, but when I have to think through some things that I'm challenged with, I'll look to C.S. Lewis, because he would just write things that I would be like, yeah, I'll agree with that, because he's a lot smarter than I am. But I like what he says here about the salt and light. He said, imagine a lot of people who always lived in the dark. Imagine a lot of people who always lived in the dark. I would say that's the world right now. Then he says, you come and you try to describe to them what light is like. Imagine if you were in a pitch black room. How would you describe what light is like? Oh, it's bright. I don't know. It's dark in here. It's all I see. Darkness. See, I knew right when C.S. Lewis wrote something like, yeah, this will be good, right? You come in to describe to them what light is like. You might tell them that if they come into the light, that same light would fall on them, and they would all reflect it, and thus become what we call visible. Is it not quite possible that they would imagine that, since they were all receiving the same light? and all reacting to it in the same way, i.e. reflecting it. They would all look alike. But is that the truth? No. Whereas you and I know that the light will in fact bring out or show up how different they are. Do you mean to say that again? If you're in darkness, if we were all in darkness, and that's all you ever knew, and we'd talk to one another, you may recognize voices, but you may think we all look the same. But then the light would come on, like, wow, look at Andy. I didn't know he looked like that. Look at my mom. I didn't know she looked like. And you start looking at it, you didn't know it, and now you see them. But the one thing you would know is we all look different. What's he mean by that right there? I kind of thought about that and was challenged by it, by what he was saying. But you think about when people live their lives and they get light on them, and it can reveal a very different picture of how they're looking in their lives, into the darkness that you've had in your life, and you'll be forced to change for the things of God. Then he goes on to say, or again, suppose a person who knew nothing about salt. You give him a pinch to taste, and he experiences a particular strong, sharp taste. You ever eat a spoonful of salt? Whew. You then tell him that in your country, people use salt in all their cooking. Might he not reply, in that case, I suppose all your dishes taste exactly the same? Because the taste of that stuff you have just given me is so strong that it will kill the taste of everything else. And C.S. Lewis concludes, but you and I know that the real effect of salt is what? Exactly the opposite. So far from killing the taste of the egg, and he says cabbage, I'll leave that off. But how about an egg? If you eat a plain egg, but then you add what? A pinch of salt. Doesn't it taste so much better? Doesn't it actually bring out the flavor so much more? They do not show their real taste till you have added the salt. Some people don't realize who they are in this world until the salt of the earth touches them and impacts them. We are all called to be the light of the world and the salt of the earth. How you live in your life. It's one thing to simply know this stuff. It's a whole other thing to display it. Church, we're called to display the salt and light in our lives. Would you pray with me, please? Father, we thank you that we're going to get into this message, the 3M, and look at your Gospel of Matthew. What a unique perspective, calling all of us to turn and repent. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven, truly, God, is near. The work of your Son, Jesus, the message from your Son, Jesus, can be challenging. How do you start a sermon with those powerful words and message of the Beatitudes, Lord, where he turns the world upside down? And then right off the bat, you challenge all those who are listening. You know, I think about these messages that were given and we're going to look at all these weeks. I may have been stuck there, just hearing that over and over resonate in my head. Lord, am I the salt of the earth? Am I the light of the world? You put that on us. Father, help me. And maybe that is the heart cry for everyone here today, for many here today. That, Lord, they struggle with this. They're challenged by it. Oh, Lord, that it would stick to each heart today, throughout this week, throughout this season, throughout all their days remaining on this earth. That each one of us, Lord, called by you, this message better stick that we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Let that be displayed in each one of us today and always. Amen.